The night the world now remembers as one of the most unforgettable concerts of the 1990s did not begin with fireworks or flashing headlines. It began with a whisper of anticipation that moved like electricity through the crowd, a feeling that something extraordinary was about to unfold. Long before social media could amplify every second, long before viral clips could immortalize a single high note, there was only the stage, the lights, and the heartbeat of thousands waiting in breathless silence. And then he appeared. Bruno Mars stepped into that golden haze of spotlights as if he had always belonged there, as if the decade itself had been waiting for him to claim it. What happened next would become the stuff of legend. 1990s were defined by bold personalities, explosive performances, and artists who were not afraid to bleed their souls into the microphone. Yet even in an era overflowing with iconic names and larger-than-life tour, there are rare nights that rise above the rest. This was one of them. From the very first chord that rang through the arena, it was clear that this was not just another stop on a tour schedule. It was a moment suspended in time. The audience felt it in the way their skin tingled. The band felt it in the way their instruments seemed to vibrate with a deeper resonance. Bruno Mars felt it in the way he closed his eyes before singing the opening line, as if silently promising that he would give everything he had. He did not rush, he did not overwhelm. Instead, he commanded the stage with a quiet confidence that built like a rising tide. The lights dimmed to a warm amber glow, illuminating his silhouette as the first melody drifted out into the cavernous space. A hush fell across the crowd so complete that even the faint shuffle of feet seemed like thunder. Then his voice cut through the silence, rich and aching, carrying a weight of emotion that felt far older than the decade itself. It was the kind of voice that could pull tears from strangers and make them feel like they were not alone in whatever heartbreak they carried. As the tempo quickened, the atmosphere shifted from reverent awe to explosive celebration. Bruno moved with effortless rhythm, gliding across the stage as though the floor itself were guiding him. Each spin, each step, each playful grin toward the audience felt spontaneous yet impossibly precise. The band matched his energy, horns blazing, drums pounding with a heartbeat that seemed synchronized with every person in the arena. The 1990s had seen its share of showmen, but on that night, Bruno Mars did not merely perform, he reigned. What made the concert unforgettable was not just the technical brilliance or the seamless choreography. It was the way he made thousands of people feel seen. Between songs, he spoke with a vulnerability that cut through the spectacle. He thanked the crowd not with rehearsed lines, but with genuine gratitude, his voice cracking slightly as he described how music had been his lifeline. The audience responded with thunderous applause, not out of obligation, but because they recognized authenticity when they saw it. In that era of glittering excess and chart-topping competition, sincerity felt revolutionary. Midway through the set, the lights dropped to near darkness, leaving only a single spotlight on him and a piano. The roar of the crowd softened into expectant murmurs. He sat down slowly, fingers hovering above the keys as if he were weighing the emotion of what was to come. The first notes floated into the air like fragile glass, and suddenly the arena felt intimate, almost sacred. It was a ballad that seemed to hold the entire decade in its melody: hope, longing, heartbreak, resilience. When he reached the chorus, his voice trembled with such raw intensity that even those seated in the highest rows could feel it pierce straight through them. Some say this was the moment the concert transcended entertainment and became history. People would later describe how strangers reached for one another's hands, how tears streamed freely without embarrassment, how the sound of thousands singing along created a harmony so powerful it felt like a collective confession. Bruno did not overpower the crowd during that chorus, he let them carry it with him. It was not a performance delivered to an audience, it was a shared experience. Then, as if determined to prove that vulnerability and exuberance could coexist, he shifted the mood once more. The band erupted into an upbeat groove that sent waves of movement through the arena. Neon lights flashed in vibrant patterns, reflecting off faces that were now glowing with unfiltered joy. Bruno's footwork became sharper, faster, daring. He teased the audience with playful ad-libs, laughing mid-lyric, feeding off their energy as they screamed his name. It felt less like a concert and more like a celebration of being alive in that exact moment. Critics who attended that night would later struggle to capture it in words. They wrote about his vocal control, about the precision of the band, about the flawless packing of the setlist. But beneath those technical observations lay something harder to articulate. There was a sense that the 1990s themselves had crystallized on that stage. The era's eclectic influences, funk, soul, pop, R&B, were woven seamlessly into his performance, creating a sound that felt both nostalgic and refreshingly new. He honored the past without being confined by it. Backstage, those who worked behind the scenes sensed the magnitude of what was unfolding. Crew members exchanged glances of disbelief as each song seemed to outshine the last. Security guards found themselves swaying despite their attempts to remain stoic. Even seasoned professionals who had seen countless tours admitted later that they knew they were witnessing something rare. There are performances that fill venues, and then there are performances that fill memories. This was the latter. As the night drew closer to its climax, anticipation grew almost unbearable. The final stretch of songs felt like a sprint towards something monumental. Bruno's voice, far from showing fatigue, grew even more powerful. Sweat glistened on his forehead, catching the stage lights like tiny sparks. He moved with the urgency of someone determined to leave nothing unsaid, nothing unexpressed. Each note was delivered as if it might be the last chance to say it. When he introduced the final song, the crowd erupted in a roar that seemed capable of shaking the very foundation of the arena. He stood there for a moment, soaking it in, a small smile playing at the corner of his lips. It was not arrogance, it was gratitude. The opening beat dropped and the audience exploded into synchronized movement. Voices blended with the music in a deafening chorus that blurred the line between artist and fans. It felt like a culmination not just of a setlist, but of an era's spirit. As the final note echoed into silence, there was a split second where time seemed to stop. Then the applause began, swelling into a standing ovation that refused to fade. Bruno took a deep breath, bowing slightly, clearly overwhelmed. Confetti rained down in shimmering waves, catching in his hair and on his shoulders. He looked up, eyes shining, and placed a hand over his heart. In that gesture, simple yet profound, the legend was sealed. Years later, people would still speak of that night with a kind of reverence. They would say it was the concert that defined the decade. The one that proved charisma cannot be manufactured and emotion cannot be faked. The one where Bruno Mars did not simply perform in the 1990s, but embodied everything that made the era unforgettable. It became a benchmark against which other concerts were measured, a gold standard whispered about whenever discussions of the greatest live performances arose. The magic of that night lies not only in its spectacle but in its humanity. Beneath the lights and the choreography, there was a man pouring his heart into every lyric, daring to be vulnerable in front of thousands. In doing so, he created a connection that outlived the final encore. The echoes of that performance still ripple through time, reminding those who were there and those who have only heard the stories that sometimes a single night can change the way we remember an entire era. That 1990 concert wasn't just a musical event. It was a reminder that amidst the glitz and glamour of the industry, what truly endures is honesty of emotion. And on that night, Bruno Mars stood as king of the stage, not because of a crown or a title, but because of his ability to make everyone in the room feel like they were part of something bigger than themselves. That's why, to this day, that night lives on in memory as an unforgettable concert, as a legend born under the lights of the stage, and as proof that when music and soul unite, history is made. That 1990 concert wasn't just a musical event. It was a reminder that amidst the glitz and glamour of the industry, what truly endures is honesty of emotion. And on that night, Bruno Mars stood as king of the stage, not because of a crown or a title, but because of his ability to make everyone in the room feel like they were part of something bigger than themselves. That's why, to this day, that night lives on in memory as an unforgettable concert, as a legend born under the lights of the stage, and as proof that when music and soul unite, history is made.